Cats, cops, and C4. You know, I never thought I'd say this, but I might need to start carrying more boom around, Omega's demo man remarks as he sets up the last bomb to break the bottom half of the cloning capsule. Above him, something started to phase through and catches a bullet in the forehead, causing it to slip out. Another poor cloaken. He quickly gets to a safe distance and initiates the final detonation. The axiom around the capsule shifts and it goes from activating and sending out numerous clones to merely containing and preserving them, leaving them as a problem for later. Omega here, last of known capsules on our half, have been pacified. Copy that, Agent Omega. Do you and Alpha deem the premises safe for civilians? Dispatch asks over the comms. Police and special forces, perhaps? Jane Average off the street? No, Omega says. I agree. The police can come in, but this is still a hot crime scene. Full civvies should stay the hell out, Alpha states. All right, I'm contacting the police and telling them to arrive. A small army of special forces is already gathering outside. We had maybe 3 minutes until they started to ignore Morgan and go in anyways. Dispatch states, and there's a pause. And we're go. Expect friendly company? I will personally hunt you down and kick your ass. Is there anything remotely resembling friendly fire from you people? Copy that. The highly amused Omega states, even as he hears many boots from very heavy people crash around upstairs. Safety's on, boys. No fuck-ups. Alpha remarks, and there's a few clicks on the weapons around Omega, who nods. It takes only about 3 minutes for the teams above to find the way down and start pouring in. There are exclamations in about 4 distinct language groups that the men file away as something likely fun to call someone else later, or maybe translate if they're feeling bored. Omega leads his team back to the entrance chamber to find roughly 5 teams of heavily armored and armed alien women. Not quite power armor, but maybe just a step or 2 down. He nods in approval. You with the split circle symbol? You're the second squad leader? A Canador woman in customized armor with a clear rank insignia on her shoulder demands as she sees him. Agent Omega, ma'am, he confirms. I see. My translator states that your title means bringer of the end, or is it the last agent? It's a code name. It doesn't have to make sense, just be distinct enough to be hard to mistake for something else. Right. I'm also almost always teamed up with Alpha, so we're the beginning and the end of the conflict. There we go. I was worried you humans would sound reasonable for a moment. Heaven forbid we start giving people the wrong impressions, Omega remarks while mimicking Sir Philip's voice a little. There is a snort from the squad behind him and he turns and points to the long shot. Gotcha. Sorry, sir. Right. Anyways, Agent Omega, the commander of Marrow Squad, is taking Alpha's statements. But I want yours. You were the team that were actually physically close to this place before the portal opened up. What happened? I'll need my full squad to give a full report as a great deal of axiom effects were being used, and our adept appears to be under interrogation over there, Omega says, nodding to where several officers were surrounding his squad, heavy and adept and clearly taking notes. Very well, a summation then. We came here expecting trouble but hoping for a boring shift. Trouble started and we started moving. Anything that approached with hostile intent was terminated, and we moved as fast as possible to prevent the spread of damage and danger. I'm seeing a lot of damage around here, but no danger. The priority was pacifying the area and rendering it safe for our forces and others to enter. And you just opened fire on anything moving? No, ma'am. We opened fire on crazed individuals charging directly at us with clearly hostile intent. I see. Now, it looks like things are wrapping up with your adept in heavy. We will continue this when they're here, she states before waving towards the group surrounding Omega's adept in heavy and gesturing for them to bring over the soldiers. Dispatch, we have a second group of killers taking aim at Miss Frost and Duckett. Permission to evac them to the Dauntless? Chank asks into his communicator. Confirmed. Prep them both, his dispatch says, and he nods before turning to Amy and Gabriella. All right, it's clear that today is going to keep being annoying, so I'm getting you both behind an army and several bulkheads, he exclaims while taking out a small pair of Kutha pins. These will work as beacons. Put them on and I'll confirm you're ready. Then you'll be safe and sound on the Dauntless. What about you? Amy asks him. I am going to go out there and get into a competition with an empty handmaster as to who can make assassins regret their career choice the most. Cenk says before Miss Duckett nods. "Thank you," she says and takes the pins from him to fasten first to Amy's dress and then her own shirt. "Dispatch, initiate civilian recall." Cenk orders, and there's a sense of distant axiom use, and both Amy and Gabriella vanish in a teleport. He nods and then unbars the door and steps out of the room, blocking a brutal punch with his forearm from a large assassin who had been hidden quietly nearby, just waiting for a mistake. Too late. "Where?" she begins before he shifts his arms and turns his block into a grab and twists the Agila's arm to a painful degree. "A good question. Where is the bounty on Miss Frost posted exactly?" Cenk asks, even as he casually tucks his communicator into his breast pocket to act as a body cam. "Screw you, you little." The Agila grunts before suddenly pulling Axiom, and there's suddenly enough strength in her, she sends him flying with a quick turn of her body. He uses the Kutha chain around his waist to adjust his Axiom use and phases through the wall harmlessly. A bit of his own Axiom use, and he grabs the air itself and slows his momentum before casually walking out of the sitting room he'd been hurled into to face the Agila who's already charging. "Miss, this isn't going to end well unless you surrender," he states plainly, and he just gets a low bellow like a furious bull. "Oh, geez, don't have a cow, lady." He spreads his legs in a wide and stable stance and starts charging his body with Axiom. Then as she bears down on him, clearly with the intent of impaling him on her horns and slamming him through every wall in her way, he grabs onto the horns and steadies himself as much as possible. He cancels a huge amount of her momentum, and then she rears up to try and throw him. But his plan is not to wrestle with a literal bull. Or rather, he's not going to wrestle a cow into submission. He's taking the fight somewhere else. He teleports and drags her with him, and they're suddenly in midair and at the edge of the Vanadis Spire atmosphere. Here the gravity is a little weaker, and they're starting to fall slowly. She has lost her stability and can no longer just wing him around. She punches at him and carries Axiom and force in order to hurl herself at him. She shifts so he lands on her feet and runs along her before drawing a stun pistol and unloading into the woman until she goes limp and passes out. He angles his fall to catch her and shifts her until she's slung over his shoulders, and he charges some extra power to his Axiom brand, and he steers his fall to the garden where he can see movement. Not that it takes long for the fall to take them there. He's just in time to see a Canador in full armor warping in, and he catches a combined laser and plasma bombardment before landing on the head of the armor so she cannot dodge, and slams her into the garden. He steps back and crouches down low over the shocked Canador and points right at her main camera. "Do the smart thing and stay on the ground." He jumps back and away from the armor as she suddenly lashes out as she rises and swings a sword at him. He steps out of reach, and the blade nicks one of the flower gardens and goes through without resistance despite it being a solid blade. There's a massive clanging sound, and the Canador is down on her knees again before the sound of metal shrieking rings out, and then a slam as she collapses to show Kayombo behind her. "It's generally easier to dodge when you're not carrying someone 3 times your own body weight," Kayombo remarks, and he snorts. "I wasn't going to let her cleave through a properly taken prisoner." "Ah, a warrior's response," she says with a smile. "I take it that Amy and Miss Duckett are safe?" "Safe on the Dauntless, which means we don't have to worry too much beyond more than accidentally racking up a damage bill," Cenk replies as he walks up and checks the armor of the Canador. "The same V symbol. Is this some kind of guild sign?" "Not much of a way to narrow that down. Simple shapes are very popular among organizations," Kylon notes before nodding to behind him. "Yes, I can sense them." Cenk confirms as he puts down the Agala and puts some cuffs on her. "Do I need to turn around, or is Vera actually going to—" There is a massive roar from the Takra as she pounces on the trinity of Apuk assassins that had just teleported in. "Having fun?" Chunk asks as he finally turns to see Vera make a complete mockery of the 3 massively muscled women after having easily batted away their war swords. There is a roar of contentment as Vera hooks her claw into the skirts of one of the Apuk as she tries to run and pulls her back into the ball of screaming women, panic and fun that she's rolling the 3 girls into. A ball she starts battering around until the women stop screaming and start swearing. An overcharged shock blast goes off, and Chunk looks to the left to see Linda pinning a grizzled-looking Lopen woman down and cuffing her. That the Lopen is slightly charred and smoking explains the lack of resistance she's receiving. Frustrated, Chunk calls out to her. This is a very annoying situation, and I really don't like assassins who target children. I think that's about as uncontroversial a statement as there physically can be, Chink retorts. This one also has that, what did you call it? A V symbol. Yes, that marking is very similar to the letter V, Chink replies. Well, this one has a badge like that hanging off her belt here, Linda says, and Chink considers. It has to be a guild of some kind. He notes before checking his attacker/catch and confirming that she has one as well. He takes it off her and examines it more closely. He finds something. Bit of engraving. Amaraz Liqua. Amaraz Liqua? Kylon asks, and he tosses the badge over. Oh, this is in Lutrin language. It uses a very similar alphabet to galactic trade. What's it called? Chink asks as the swearing, screaming ball that Vera is batting around breaks apart into 3 exhausted apukes she lies down on to pin. The deep, rumbling purr from the saber-toothed tiger tells him all he needs to know about her opinion on the situation. I don't recall off the top of my head, but if you send a picture to your dispatch, they should have it in maybe a minute at most, Kayalan says, even as she tosses the badge back. He holds up the engraving to the camera of his communicator and gives it a tap. You get that? Hold on, we're working on it. Dispatch answers. Well, hopefully we got it. It's a bounty hunting guild. On the first level of Aspire. It's the only sort of law that low on Vren. I see, Chink says before trailing off. How much money was put up to get this girl killed, or... Oh, right, this is a distraction. There is an inquisitive sound from Vera. The Takra warform was very interesting. When there was something they wanted to do happening, they did it. There was less a case of going simple and more a case of having no impulse control. She could remember what she did in it, and provided nothing distracted her, could even respond intelligently. A far cry from the animal transformation he thought it was before. This was supposed to be a distraction before a Mind Slayer was used on Miss Duckett, but with her on the Dauntless, that's unlikely to happen, giving us all the time we need to root out this mess and find out where that Mind Slayer is. As long as that thing is active, Amy is in danger. Oh, calling her Amy now. I'm going to be a grandmother, Kaisum. Lon teases, and he just gives her an unimpressed look. You're going to need to seriously up your game if you want to get me to back off.